Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel, Brandy Janae's Bookshelf. It has been a minute since I've done one of these, so excuse me for any mistakes or anything that I might forget. But if you haven't seen the way I do wrap-ups in the past, if I didn't forget anything, for halfway through the month I talk about the books in chronological order, and then at the end of the month, or most likely into the next month, I will wrap up everything I've read. Halfway through the month I finished 15 books, which honestly I was shocked at. So like I said, I will be talking about them in chronological order. If I'm looking down, I have my computer in front of me. Normally I try to have like a piece of paper in front of me, but I don't have a printer. All of that being said, let's just jump right into it. The first book that I finished in October was Savannah Secrets by Reese Ryan. This is a dual perspective story following both Savannah and Blake, which is the male and female lead of the story. However, we're mostly following things from Savannah's point of view. So this story is following Savannah as she moves to Tennessee to apply for an open position at King's Distillery as their events manager. However, her intentions aren't completely pure. Her intentions on interviewing for this position is actually to be able to go look for proof of her grandfather's involvement in the company. Accomplishing that, she wants monetary value from the family to come to her family, since she was told stories growing up about how the guy who started the company was he stole her grandfather's recipes in order to get to where he is now. But of course things become complicated when she develops a connection that leads to a romance with the heir of the company, Blake. So for this story, I thought it had a good premise. I was interested in seeing how Savannah would go about getting or finding out the secrets of this company, trying to find proof that her grandfather was a contributor, especially because according to the family, their grandfather was the sole person who started the company. He didn't have any help. So going into it, I was really interested in seeing how that would play out, and I did enjoy finding out in the end what happened. However, I had some big issues with this book. My main issue with this was the fact that Savannah really didn't take in account the feelings of anybody in the Abbott family. She kind of just disregarded them based off of the word of her grandfather. Being told a certain story a certain way from somebody that you really value in your life is going to have some importance. But upon going to Tennessee, getting the job, meeting the Abbott family, she had opportunities to realize that maybe everybody in the family wasn't exactly how her grandfather remembered the man that he worked with. Even with those moments, she disregarded it, and she was just like, well, I don't care. My grandfather said these people can't be trusted, so I can't trust them. Even though her grandfather specifically was talking about one person in this family. So she constantly just disregarded any actions that they showed her and continued to hold on to the idea that she had of them when she came there. She had opportunities to really open up and let them know what was going on. I wanted to enjoy the story more than I did because it had an interesting premise, but the way that the main character handled herself throughout this entire book, I didn't like at all. Also, there was something about the writing style that I just did not vibe with. I think this would have benefited from being told in first person, but it was told in third. I gave it 3 stars. Moving on, the next book that I finished was Skip Beat Volume 44 by Yoshiki Nakamura. And honestly, I feel like I've talked about this series multiple times on this channel, but I will give a brief description of the beginning, which is kind of not doing this justice because so much has passed since the beginning and now. But the story starts off following Kyoko. She moves to Tokyo with her childhood best friend slash crush. He decides to go to Tokyo because he wants to pursue a music career, and he asks her to go along. However, she doesn't realize that he wants her there to be able to work, take care of him, make sure he's fed and everything until his career takes off. When she finally finds this out, she decides that she's going to enter the showbiz world and become more famous than he is. And this is pretty much following her journey along that way. And in doing that, she discovers that she actually has a passion for acting, and she has a talent for it as well. That's maybe like the first 5 volumes, maybe. And like I said, we're at volume 44, so a lot has changed. At this point, we're kind of inching along a possible romance between the 2 characters that are on this cover. So in this volume, we have a couple things going on. Between the 2 main characters that I just talked about, or between the 2 characters on the cover that I just talked about, they're in the middle of a misunderstanding and they're not really talking. Ren, who is the guy here, he said something to Kyoko, and he said it out of jealousy and anger, and of course she got upset about that. So she's kind of avoiding him at this point, and they aren't really talking. Also, though, she is prepping to start a new movie role. I'm a little iffy because I don't like when they get into these big fight arguments. Well, it's not even fighting, they're just not talking because of a misunderstanding on both of their ends, and they want to, but they're not. But I'm more interested, at least in this volume, I was more interested in the movie role because Kyoko grows so much each time she gets a new acting role, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her in this new role. Anyway, I gave this one 4 stars. The next one that I finished was My Love Story Volume 1 by Kazune Karahara. And this one is following a guy named Takeo, and he's unlucky in love mostly because of the way he looks. And it seems like every girl that he has a crush on seems to have a crush on his childhood best friend, Sunakawa. All of that seems to change when he ends up saving a girl on the train from being harassed. I'm not really going to talk about this book besides that here, because I did do a separate video with my first impressions where I give a description, obviously, but I do give my thoughts on that one. So I will leave a link for you guys to go check that one out, because I already did a dedicated video to that book. Moving on, I finished Komomo Comfort City Volume 2 by Maki Manami. And this one is following this girl named Komomo. She comes from a really wealthy family. However, when her family's business goes under, she's left with no money, no place to live, and she's pretty much forced to fend for herself after years, up until her high school years, of not having to do anything. But things start looking up for her when a boy named Natsu, whose father used to work for her family, and he kind of helped out as well. He comes back to wherever it was that they were living. He agrees to take care of her as long as she agrees to work for him. That's pretty much the premise of the first volume, and in the second volume it's continuing along with that. But in the second volume, Komomo finds out that she has more freedom to do certain things that she didn't get to do when her family had money. Mainly this one is focusing on dating. The series is a little weird because I feel like it's supposed to be a love story between Komomo and Natsu. However, Natsu seems to be there to torture her because she used to pick on him when they were kids, and now he's just like, it's my turn to get revenge. However, it's clear to me that he has some sort of feelings for her, because whenever anything happens to her outside of his shop, he's always there to defend her, take care of her, or threaten the people who have done something to her. And then in the second volume, they introduce the new guy, which could possibly turn into a love triangle. I could see it going that way. So I'm not sure the direction that this is going to be taking, but so far I have been enjoying the story. I gave this one 3 stars. The next thing that I finished was Watch Me by Dorian Richards. This was a picture book, and this was an early copy of this book that I received from Macmillan, and it's not coming out until January of next year. This story is following the author's father as he decides to move to America to pursue his dreams of becoming a doctor, and how he sticks with those dreams despite the negativity that people throw his way about him pursuing his dreams. It's a really simple book with concepts that I feel like it's easy to grasp for kids. It's inspirational. It teaches perseverance and even empathy in certain situations. I enjoyed this one. Like I said, I gave this one 5 stars. I'm a little weird about rating picture books because it's either you like it or you don't. Does it have a good message or not? I think this one did have a good message. I like the artwork. Good story. Like I said, I would suggest you guys go check this one out, especially if you have someone around you who you can read picture books to. Alright, so I took a break in between filming because like I think I mentioned earlier, I'm filming really late, so I took a break to eat dinner. And I decided to zoom in some because it seemed like I was kind of far away. I think my camera is a little farther away from me than I typically have it, so I just zoomed in a little bit for anybody who cares about all that. And I wasted something on my shirt and I don't feel like changing, so if you see that, just ignore it. Anyway, back into the wrap up. The next book I finished was Orin High School Host Club Volume 3 by Bisco Hattori. So this one is following a girl named Haruhi. She attends this school for really rich kids, and one day she accidentally breaks an $80,000 vase that belongs to the school's host club, and they are forcing her to pay them back for the amount that the vase was worth. However, because she goes to the school on a scholarship, she obviously can't afford that, and because she can't afford to pay them back for the vase, she's forced to work for the host club, and the profits that she makes will go towards paying back that $80,000 balance that she has with them. So I didn't get to talk about volume 2 because I read that during the time when I wasn't on my channel, but I didn't really like volume 2 that much. It was kind of all over the place, and I felt like volume 3 I did enjoy it more because it was a more consecutive story. So I appreciated that, and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue it after reading volume 2. But with volume 3, like I said, I did enjoy it more, and it ended off at a point in the story where I want to read on. So at some point I will continue on with that. I'm just hoping that we get a concise, I guess, storyline. But anyway, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Next, I finished Wild Ones Volume 2 by Kyo Fujiwara. So this story is following a girl named Sachi, and after she loses her mother, she's forced to go live with her estranged grandfather. However, she doesn't know until she moves in with him that he is the head of a Yakuza, however you say it, gang, and she's trying to balance out living with this gang that's run by her grandfather, as well as still living life as a normal teenager. This is another one that I enjoyed the story. It's nothing super special, but I am enjoying the story enough to continue on with it. I'm a little on the fence about the romance in here because I have a feeling that she's gonna have a romance with a certain character, but it's being drawn out, and I have a feeling that it's gonna take the entire series for anything to happen. And I think the series is like 10 volumes, so I'm a little skeptical about reading that one, but I'm already in it, so I'm gonna finish it, and hopefully it's not too frustrating watching them do this will they won't they. I ended up giving this one 3 stars as well. The next book I finished was Rose for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall, and this one is following a character named Sarah, and we find out at the beginning of the story that her sister Becca went missing, I think about a year ago, after she went to play this game that was based off of a local ghost legend from the small town that they live in. A text ends up going out to the entire school in this town with directions of how to start the game, and as a result of that, Sarah and a group of her old friends decide to go out to the woods to try to play the same game to see if they can find Becca. And of course, as you can expect, this leads to a lot of craziness. So I ended up really enjoying the story. This is one of those books that's told in different formats, sort of. It is told in prose, but there are like written accounts, interviews, descriptions of pictures and videos and things along those lines. And because of this, a lot of the story wasn't told in chronological order. Obviously the main part of the story was told in the order, but there was a lot of back and forth trying to go and figure out details and learn about what actually happened, because we have a kind of unreliable character. Like, she's sort of a reliable character, but as things go on you realize that maybe not so much. I really enjoyed the story, and I'm kind of sad that I didn't read this last year when I got my physical arc, but it's one that I would highly recommend for people to check out, especially if you're looking for a book with that creepy atmosphere, especially for this time of year. I think this would be a really good one to check out. And one thing that I really appreciate that this author did is that if anything happened to anybody throughout the book, I'm not going to say anything, but no one recovered from anything that happened. And I feel like, especially when it comes to YA, a lot of those things are usually unraveled, or something happens where at least most of the characters come out unscathed. And I feel like, at least for this book, the author did not do that. If something happened to the characters, whether it seemed like something that was possible or not, that was kind of just the end of it, and they had to deal with it. And I think that made this book that much more impactful. I ended up giving this 4 stars. The next one that I'm going to talk about is Witchy by Ariel Slamit Reese, and this is an exclusive OwlCrate cover if you haven't already seen that. So the story is based in a world where the length of your hair kind of contributes to the amount or strength of your power. And in the story we're following this character named Naniva. But at the start of the story, her father ends up being killed by being burned because his hair is too long in the government's eyes, and he's seen as an enemy. Because of this, Naniva doesn't want to be a part of the Witch Guard. She is 18, so the testing is coming up in order to decide who will be conscripted to go to the Royal Guard. She's struggling because, like I said, her father was killed off by the Witch Guard, and she doesn't want anything to do with that. But also because the length of her hair doesn't really correlate with her amount of magic or what she's been able to show so far. But when the true length of her hair is discovered, she is conscripted against her choice, and she ends up making an impossible choice, and the story really takes off from there. This was an extra book that I received in an OwlCrate box, and I didn't really know what to expect from this, but I ended up enjoying this way more than I was expecting. I love the artwork, I love the story. It's beautiful. I don't even know how to explain this, but this is one that I could see myself recommending to a lot of people because I enjoyed it so much, and I feel like it's one of those things that a lot of people can get something from. I don't think I said, but I did give this one 4 stars. The next one that I finished was Private by Kate Bryan. This one was a reread for me. This book is following a 15-year-old Reed Brennan, and she is going off to her first boarding school. She decided to apply to the school because her home life is not really the greatest. Her mother is addicted to pills, I believe, and she pretty much makes life for her family at home a living hell. Her brother has graduated high school and gone off to college, and she's just like, you know what, I can't take it anymore. So she applies to this boarding school, and she gets in with a scholarship, so she finally gets to go off and do what she wants to do. And of course, going to the school, she has a certain amount of expectations, and she feels like the only way to achieve those things that she wants is to get in with the it crowd of the school. And in order to do that, she's willing to do almost anything that they want her to do in order to, you know, achieve that status that she wants. Like I said, this was a reread for me. I think I first read this back in middle school and high school, you know, going through the entire series or what I read of the series. This is the first time that I've read it since then, and I noticed a lot of things that I didn't notice when I was younger. I'm just gonna say this book, and I'm sure the rest of the series, is just full of toxic relationships. Like, this is the definition of toxic relationships. This book was just a mess, honestly. It was entertaining reading it. I remember bits and pieces of how the series goes, but I'm curious to reread the entire series now. I think maybe next year I will try to reread the entire series, but for now I decided not to give a rating for this one, only because I did read it when I was so young, and I don't feel right giving it a rating now since it's been so long in between me reading it, and I obviously don't feel the same way that I felt about it when I first read it. The next one that I finished was Blue Period Volume 1 by Tsubasa Yamaguchi, and I also have a first impressions video up for this one, so I'm not going to talk too much about this one. But this one is following this guy named Yatora, and he's kind of just been living life based on others' expectations of what it is to be successful. So he has good grades, he's kind of a popular guy with all these friends, and yeah, he's just kind of going through life. But things change once he realized that he has an interest in art, and once he starts exploring that, he realizes that he actually has a passion for it, and is basically exploring as he gets into art and learns more and decides to pursue something that makes him happy. Like I said, I do have that first impressions video up of this one, which I think is one I did a really good job on, if I do say so myself. So go check that one out for more thoughts on this one. So next I'm going to be talking about Castle Mango Volumes 1 and 2 by Narise Konohara. So this story is following Yaruza and his family as they're living and running Castle Mango, which is a love hotel that was left to them by his father once he passed away. He goes to the school where kids go that have money. He's there on a scholarship, and he's really all about his studies. He's a really serious guy, but everything seems to change when one day there is an adult film company at the hotel filming a scene, and he is kind of mistaken for an actor. Well, he's not really mistaken for an actor, but the director that's there for that film is he asked him to star in the role basically after he had a problem with his initial actor. One thing leads to another, and Yaruza thinks that the director is hitting on his little brother, so he decides that he's gonna start a relationship with Togome, who is the director. He decided that he was gonna start a relationship with him in order to keep him away from his little brother. So I gave the first volume 3 stars and the second volume 4 stars. I thought this story was cute in terms of the romance. However, I felt a little weird, at least in the first volume, because I didn't like the way the relationship between Yaruza and Togame started. It was all based on a lie in order to keep this guy away from his younger brother. However, I thought it was really cute the way that things progressed. I don't really want to talk too much about the series because it will get into spoiler territory, but yeah. First volume 3 stars, second volume 4 stars. The second to last book that I have to talk about in this video is Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. If you don't know, this is the sequel to Aurora Rising. So it's very hard to talk about this book without spoiling anything for the first book, so this is going to be very brief. This is following the characters that made it past the first book okay, and is following them on their mission to defeat the Raham, which was introduced in the first book. And that's honestly all I can really say without spoiling anything. This book was a lot of fun. I did end up listening to the audiobook, but for a good majority of the book I was following along in my physical copy while doing that, so that was a lot of fun. These characters are still on the run if you've read the first book, and things are just kind of madness almost the entire book because these authors are really cruel. This ends off on a really big cliffhanger where we don't know where any of the characters are by the end of this. So yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. If you're interested in watching a spoilery read with me vlog style video. I have that up for this, and you guys can go check that out. I go into details while I'm reading, and then afterwards I do talk about how I felt about the book, and I do also talk a little bit about theories that I have for book 3. So if you're interested in checking that one out, I will also leave that linked so you guys can go watch that one if you haven't already. And the final video that I have to talk about today is Weathering with You Volume 1 by Makoto Shinkai. This one is following this guy named Hokkaido, and at the beginning of the story he runs away from his small island to live in Tokyo, and there he meets this girl who he finds out can control the weather. It is taking place in Japan, but things are a little different because it's constantly raining. I think I remember reading that there is a bit more behind the story, but at least as far as this first volume, that's all we really explore. With this first volume, I feel like there wasn't enough for me to get a full grasp on the direction that the story is trying to take. There were a lot of things that were introduced, but none of them were fully explored, and I'm still on the fence about the series. I feel like I need to read at least one other volume to see if I want to continue on with this series. I gave this one 3 stars, and we'll see how that goes from there whenever the next volume gets translated into English. So those are all the books that I read during the first half of October. Let me know down in the comments what one of your favorite books that you've read so far this month was. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye.